Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international award-winning author Mia Moses Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook, coming soon, Missing 2, Double the Spence, Double the Fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 quiz of pains and King David Psalms, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, and check out the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com and on Linktree at the Mike Wagner Show. 50 podcast platforms, 110 countries, including Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, plus Apple Music, BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok today. We're here with an amazing gentleman who's an author and an award-winning reporter for Bloomberg News for finance, tech, real estate, and culture. He spent 5 years with Wall Street Journal and The Economist. He has a new book out, which is a reflective, smart, deeply rooted look at the millennial generation, which basically draws experiences of 5 diverse individuals and explores where we can go from here. And it's currently America's largest living generation and on the verge of power. So look out, baby boomers. So talk about with what happened to millennials in defense of a generation. Live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studios in beautiful downtown London, the amazing author, award-winning report for Bloomberg News, and also spent 5 years Wall Street Journal, The Economist. His book is called What Happened to Millennials in Defense of a Generation, the multi-talented Charlie Wells. Charlie, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. So great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on board, Charlie, and especially from the other side of the pond. We welcome everybody aboard, where if you are 24/7, 365, you're on the Mike Wagner Show. You're an author, award-winning reporter for Bloomberg News for finance, tech, real estate, and culture. You spent 5 years at the Wall Street Journal and The Economist. You have a new book out, which is a reflective, smart, deeply rooted look at the millennial generation that draws experiences from 5 diverse individuals, explores where we can go from here, learn from them, everything else. And currently America's largest living generation and on the verge of power. The book is called What Happened to Millennials in Defense of a Generation. Before I get to that, Charlie, tell us how you first got started.
Yeah, look, so I am a personal finance reporter. I'm a journalist. I've been doing this for about 13 years. And when I got into the newsroom, I was the kind of young person in town, right? And there were all of these other young people kind of entering the workforce at the time when millennials really were kind of coming into that kind of the labor market phase of their careers. And the task at hand for me back then from my editors was, hey, go write about what these crazy kids are doing. What's going on? They're all getting Ubers everywhere. They're all going on Airbnbs and changing the way that we do things. And so I kind of started there. And ever since that time going forward, I've really written about millennial life, about what millennials are doing with their money, how they're saving, how they're investing, what they want to do. And that kind of gave me the idea for this book.
And was it one exact precise moment that simply influenced you into what you do in the rest of your career?
Yeah, I think as far as, my career, I've always loved writing, right? I've always loved talking to people too. And so when you're a journalist, I think you know this just as well as I do. If you like to write, if you like to talk to people, maybe people that you don't know, maybe strangers, people who have very different experiences, very different walks of life, very different perspectives, I love doing that. And that's something that kind of led me to where I am now. And something I got to do in this book, right? I got to talk to 5 people, as you were mentioning, across the country, very different from me over the course of years. So I interviewed people for hundreds of hours, got to know them, got kind of into their lives. And that was something that I just love doing.
And how'd you first get into journalism? Because I used to be a journalism myself, back in the 70s, early 80s, and everything like that, mainly sports, news, and all that. How'd you
Wow.
first get into journalism at your end?
It was in college, and I always knew that I wanted to do it. I think there's something really magical about writing things and having other people see them, right? Especially getting it in print back in the day, even then, right? Which, wasn't all that long ago. Seeing your name in print off the press was such an exciting thing, and it was such a great opportunity. I think there's still so many college newspapers out there that give people the chance to learn, maybe to earn some money if that's something that they need. That's so
Oh,
helpful. The
wow.
financial aid programs that some of these college newspapers have. And so I'm so thankful for that experience. And that is really where I learned how to do this craft.
That's interesting because you hear on the news that a lot of newspapers are fading away. They're doing away with the actual papers itself and going online. Now, do college newspapers still have the paper itself, or has everything gone online at your guys' end and all the colleges? Have they deal with the papers, or they still have the papers?
That's a great question. And actually, it's been this kind of interesting shift I've seen at some papers. So back when I was doing this, we had to send the newspaper to the printing press down in the basement every night, right? And
Uh-huh.
then I remember a few years later, kind of after graduation, they did away with it, right? For cost reasons, as so many have had to do. But actually, slowly we're seeing some paper products come back at a number of these colleges because, it's something of a of a way to give a roundup. Maybe it's not every single day, but you kind of, students can have it in their dining hall, or alumni who maybe don't live in the same community can be connected to it. Even if it's not every single day, right? You still get that print product. So it's kind of maybe the last thing that a lot of people would have expected, but it's kind of cool to see that come back.
I remember back in the day too that you see a newspaper left there, you find something to read, you look it up, or it's like my favorite is clipping out articles, clipping out recipes and everything, and of course collecting them in your scrapbook. I think that's one thing that's really missing from Americana, and you have digital. It's like once digital goes away, it goes away, and I think people should look at the fact that hey, it's cool to have a newspaper. It's cool to clip articles, you can clip recipes and your favorite comics and store them away or post on your dorm, post on your wall and everything. I think that's something that should that
It's
should just really
great.
come back too. Yes, we did that a lot. Right. So we just have some of that. And who are some of your favorite writers and journalists growing up, Charlie?
Yeah, so look, I think, there's one writer that I just loved, and people might laugh, but I remember going to a thrift store, and I remember seeing this huge book, and there was the name Chesapeake on it. And I remember I'm from California, and I was like, I don't even know that I said the name Chesapeake. I thought it was Cheapsake. Didn't
I would have
necessarily
said the
know.
same thing too back in the early days. Cheapsake, it's like, no, it's Chesapeake. Like, oh, okay. It must be a cheapsake from Chesapeake anyway. So go ahead.
Really? And I just remember being young and saying, that's a huge book. What is that? And it was a book by James Michener, who is an author that people, maybe different generations might know a little bit better than millennials. But he was so incredible because he wrote these captivating books about different parts of the country, different countries as well. And they'd be named places, things like Hawaii or Poland or Chesapeake, as I later learned to pronounce. And it would be just hundreds of pages of details going into the kind of history and lives of these places. And I just always found those books so inspiring and educational because I was from a little town. We couldn't afford to travel. We couldn't go to all these places, but it was kind of through these books that I learned, about other parts of the world. I'm from a town called Napoma. There's about 12,000 people there when I was growing up, but I got to learn about Hawaii. I got to learn about Poland. I got to learn about all of these places. And he told these stories through the lives of people. And I thought that was such a helpful way to learn and also a captivating way to be entertained.
And certainly as well too. And you've got an interesting book out there right now, which is about to make a mark called "What Happened to Millennials in Defense of Generation." We'll talk about that with author Charlie Wells. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios. Visit online at soundcloudstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, SoundCloud Studios is the answer. SoundCloud Studios offers fast, affordable, customized designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. It's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@soundclubstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon, paperback, and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those love be the first go missing. It's available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has garnered great reviews. An Evil Evan endorsed by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today before it goes missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2, Double Suspense, Double the Fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by the Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 exquisite pains and King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives new perspective of David through Psalms he wrote as the time of shepherd started and complicate your turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's the stuff of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. And it's all in the book right here on Sweet Psalmist of Serena Wagner. Check it out today, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, 50 podcast platforms, 110 countries. Also, Linktree at the Mike Wagner Show. Also, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok as well. And listen to us on Spreaker, Spotify, Anchor FM, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, Apple Music has more. And make sure you take us with you on a mobile device along with BitChute, Rumble, and YouTube. For great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Winter Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Winter Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, go to Amazon.com/me and Molson Zia for great books, merchandise, and more. And support the Mike Winter Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWinterShow.com. We're here then. He's a multi-talented author, award-winning reporter for Bloomberg News, finance, tech, real estate, and more. Charlie Wells on the Mike Winter Show. Before we talk about the book, What Happened to Millennials in Defense of a Generation, and with you being Bloomberg News, what were some of the best stories that you have written as well we like to hear about?
So I love writing about people. And, one way that you can kind of really get to know what people are thinking about, what they really care about, is to follow that great journalistic quote that I think we all know, which is follow the money, right? But we think about that
Right.
often, we think about that often at a really high level, right? We think about that with companies, with politicians, with incredibly powerful people. But I actually think if you follow the money in an everyday person's life, you can reveal, you can learn, you can kind of connect with someone and really understand kind of what they really care about, what they can do, what they can't do. And, I think one of my favorite stories that I've ever written at Bloomberg was about a guy in Florida who was hearing about billionaires. You hear about them all the time
Ooh.
in the news, they're incredibly powerful. And he was thinking, you know what? I want to be a billionaire of something. And so he bought 1 billion units of a cryptocurrency. We hear so much about cryptocurrencies these days. They're not all worth $1 billion. So he did not spend $1 billion on this, but he became the owner of 1 billion units of this digital currency and
That's
was
a
able
good
to
way to be a
say,
billionaire. Why not? I mean, a billion
why
pennies.
not?
Why not?
He was a billionaire. It was pretty cool.
You got that right. And of course, the millennials as well, too. It's currently America's largest living generation and on the verge of power. And, about, of course, baby boomers were the big things, but the millennials are the big thing. And of course, maybe your perspective comparing between Gen X and Gen Y and what makes the millennials stand out, over the baby boomers, Gen X, and also Gen Y as well, too, and Gen Z.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really great question. That's really kind of what I was diving into with this project, which is trying to figure out, what makes millennials tick, what makes us different, what is right about what others think about this generation of people, and what is right and wrong about maybe what we think about ourselves, right? How we can kind of maybe take a moment because millennials are, born between the years of 1981 and 1996. So people who are just about to be 30 to people who are kind of hitting their mid 40s. And so that's a really important moment in life, right? You're maybe starting a family at that point. You're entering your peak years of your career. And for me, I've been writing about these people for a long time. I was picking up on changes, picking up on some new developments, picking up on things that maybe people thought were right about us, but actually weren't. And I felt like it was a really important moment at that kind of early 30s, mid 40s point to take stock of what happened and then try to see how we can kind of correct course, for lack of a better term, as we go forward.
And of course, I guess my question is, it did take a hit on the reputation as well. It's like, being as lazy, not working, everything like that. And
What?
and why did millennials really did get a bad rap? And how do you manage to smash the stereotypes?
So it's a kind of combination of forces. I think every generation as they're growing up gets viewed by older generations as kind of questionable, right? Everyone says, "Oh, I used to do that in a different way. Why are you doing it this way?"
Mm-hmm.
And something interesting about this generation of people, about millennials, is that a lot of us were entering the workforce in the wake of the Great Recession, right? And that huge disruption to the way that American life functioned, the way the economy functioned, that was happening also at a time when social media really was blowing up, right? When that was becoming more popular, Twitter, when it used to be called that, Facebook, all those platforms. And then also, when people start to enter the workforce, that's when they really start to kind of come under the microscope, right? Because you don't necessarily choose who you work with, but that's really where you get kind of exposure to other generations. So a lot of these kind of stories about millennials being lazy, switching jobs all the time. That was something that came up a lot about millennials when we were starting out. Maybe that we were not getting ourselves in the best financial footing, that we were living too much in the moment. We were blowing all our money on expensive avocado toast for brunch. We were going on too many vacations. That's when a lot of these old stories got started.
You mentioned something about time of the recession as well, and I'm trying to think. I remember there was a recession around 81, 82, 83. Things picked up in 84. Was there another period for the recession that millennials were in? Because you said they were born from 81 to 96. What was that other period for the recession that happened? I remember what stood out was 81 to 84, and I think someone took fire. What was it? It's the economy stupid. I think that was what was it, 88, 89? I'm trying to remember. What was that other period in the recession? I'm trying to think. What was that?
Yes, yeah. So really, the recession that shaped millennials was from about 2000, I'd say 7 to 2011, 12, I would say. So
Oh,
this is
that
kind of
was
at
it. That
the
was the boom crash. What was
financial
it? Let's see.
crisis.
Now I remember.
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
This was so pivotal for us, right? Because it was when a lot of us were trying to get jobs. But at that point, right, in that recession, there was a point when youth unemployment was about 20%. So 1 in 5 young people who wanted to get a job couldn't get one. And then also, of course, so related to that recession were the after effects from the housing bubble, right? Of the prices of housing going up so high and then falling so far. And that really kind of messing with how the housing market is today, right? So this kind of set the stage for where we find ourselves now. And that's when a lot of the kind of the concerns, I think, worries about millennials and then worries that millennials have about themselves, about the economy, that's where a lot of those got set, really in the wake of that recession after the great financial crisis.
And also at the time too, there was also wars that was going on too around that period. You also had
Yeah.
the Iraq War, was it Desert Storm, and I think there was also Afghanistan. I think there was also I'm trying to think there was another one. I think there was like two wars I mentioned. Was there like a third at that time? I can't remember right now.
Well, the wars that really shaped millennials really kind of came after September 11th, right? It
That was
was
that
that.
was the other one. Okay, all right.
Yeah, the global war on terror, which George Bush talked a lot about when he was the president. And a lot of millennials lost their lives in these conflicts, right? If they didn't serve, many died, and have been dealing with the aftermath of what those conflicts were like, what it's like to come back as a veteran. One of the people in the book that I interviewed, one of those 5 people, was a veteran who served abroad during the war on terror, and that has shaped his life, the trajectory of his life from that moment until now.
Okay, and you say his name was Trevor in the book.
His name's Aaron. Yeah.
Aaron, that's it. Okay, all right,
Yeah.
and he served in the military. And how about some of the others that you had interviewed? You besides Aaron, and you also had another person you interviewed that really shaped the whole thing.
Yeah. So there were 5 different people. Aaron was one who was really impressive. It was such an honor to hear about his life. Someone else who stuck out, and was really kind of shaped by one of these big historical moments in millennial life or in the life of the 21st century so far. Her name was Olivia, and she's currently a science teacher on Long Island, a mother. A lot of millennials are now becoming parents. But one of the issues that we spoke about for many interviews was the fact that her father died in September 11th. And that is one of the
Oh,
events, right? That is one of the events that really has shaped millennial life. It shaped American life, right?
mm,
But it came at a pivotal moment for these people who were children at the time. And so there were direct effects for this generation, right? A lot of people whose parents died that day are now parents themselves and are trying to figure out kind of how to make sense of that. But also indirectly, right? By shaping American life, American economic, political, cultural life. So that was another kind of example of someone I spoke with who was really directly connected to a huge moment in American life and millennial life.
mhm. And how about the number of millennials being involved in politics? Because we went through a whole political upheaval. Of course, you had the elections with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris and everything. How many millennials or what percentage do you say are currently involved in politics? And do you think what are the chances of maybe seeing a millennial get into politics, maybe become our next president? JD Vance is pretty close as vice president.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike, that is a really good question. I think it really speaks to kind of why paying attention to millennials now is important, right? Because we are, if not in power already, JD Vance, whether you like him or not, is a millennial. Taylor Swift, whether you like her or not, is a millennial. Mark Zuckerberg, the Meta, the Facebook co-founder, he is a millennial. Sam Altman, you want to think about the future AI, OpenAI, he is also a millennial. So a lot of these people are coming into positions of power in, big companies in Washington, but also at home, right? We have millennials who are now parents, who are running families themselves. And I think trying to understand what they are, who they are, what they're worried about, and how they were shaped. That's really what I tried to do in this book. So I looked at people who are, very recognizable to anyone across the United States, but also people who are just everyday people. What are they thinking about? What choices have they made to lead them to where they are now?
And what's that one story or one person that really, really stood out for you? Talked about Aaron, you talked about Olivia. What was that one person that really stuck to you pretty much for your whole career?
For my whole career, I can't pick favorites. As a journalist, it's such an honor to speak with people, to have them share details with you. But what I would say, something that stuck out with me that millennials have made, and maybe they don't always get recognized for this, they've made sacrifices, right? They have made choices at difficult times. It was a tough economy for this group of people as they were going through, as we talked about the recession, as they've gone through things like the pandemic, at a moment when they're really trying to take leadership and ownership of their lives in the kind of, political environment that we find ourselves in. A lot of millennials have made sacrifices. They haven't done the jobs maybe that they thought they would do. Technology has changed really quickly. It's reshaped the economy. It's reshaped the choices that people have. And that's something that's really stuck with me. People making sacrifices and growing and becoming stronger for having done that.
And how about the millennials, working with baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z? And of course, you got the alphas and betas. What are some of the traits they share, like say with the boomers, Gen X, Y, and everything like that? And what are some of the traits that differ? Maybe the other generations can learn from them.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the places that I try to come from in this book is that we should try to understand each other, right, across generations. And we all have a lot in common. And I think a really important point that a researcher that at King's College basically made was that, when you're born matters, right? It's important, but it's not the only thing that's going to shape who you are, right? You got to think about the life stage that people are at, kind of, are they an adult? Are they a child? Are they starting a family? Are they not? And then also just history, right? These big events that shape everyone on Earth. So kind of looking at all of those factors is really important. And I think it can be almost too easy just to look at the year someone's born and think that that is going to determine what they're like. And so trying to turn down, I think some of the temperature on that is really important.
And plus, you being millennial yourself as well too. At that, what have you learned from other millennials? Also, what you learn, like still being with the generations, going from baby boomers, all the way down to the beta generation. Plus, there's also some from the silent generation also remains as well too, and that's probably most overlooked is also silent generation.
Yeah, there's so many different groups of people whose I think experiences have shaped who they are. And I think with millennials, something that I picked up on a lot in my research was this idea of change, right? Having gone through big changes in technology, a lot of us remember, we have really cognizant memories of being, maybe even teenagers and not having the internet yet. And now you and I are speaking over the internet, right?
That
There's
that
such a huge shift.
it does. You're right. It's almost like their version of radio, TV, the classic newspaper, and everything like that. And of course, remember the dial-up internet? That was a big thing. It's like like that. And someone says, "I need to use the phone."
I love that. I love that. And these memories are important, right? Because they remind us that things haven't always been this way, and they also don't have to be if we don't want them to be.
Right, and also too that you also had the days of pictures as well too. Of course, you have the Kodak, you have the Polaroids, and everything
Oh
like
yeah, I
that.
remember
And,
that.
and do you think the millennials are open to like trying out the classic technology or have the technology like rotary phones or say with the big 25-inch TVs without the remote to get up and change yourself or the newspaper you and I talked about just having the actual print or have an actual radio or I'm trying to think what is the other one? The typewriter. That's the other
The
one too. Yes,
typewriter.
I remember that. Oh my gosh.
Well, look, I would say that I think one thing I learned from doing the research for this book, I talked to people all across the country, very different backgrounds, very different perspectives on things. Talking about memory is one way to bring people together still, right? It's one area where people who just see the world in very different ways, they can look back and it opens them up. And when they start talking about objects, you and I have been talking about typewriters, we've been talking about rotary phones, then you start talking about memories. And then that just gets people to start talking in general, right? And I think one of the issues we have, in the world right now is this epidemic of loneliness. We've got people who feel very isolated. We've got this issue of
Oh, yes.
polarization, right? It's very real. And so talking about the past, I think is a really helpful way to try to make a better future.
And of course, the millennials, if I'm right, are not used to loneliness and everything like that. How do they manage to deal with it? And what are some of the tips that millennials and anybody can reconnect? Back in the day, it's always like you go to a coffee shop, you talk to your neighbor, or in college, you just go to your dorm, roommates, go to a cafeteria, read a paper, share, clip, everything. And what's the best advice for millennials to really connect if they're encountering loneliness?
Some of the best stories that came out through this book were moments when people were not at the computer, when they were not in front of their phones, when they were just kind of living their lives. And so I think that that says something about how we connect to people. And some of the moments that were really hard for people were when they were in front of this technology. And I think that gets at this broader debate of, is technology inherently a good thing or is it a bad thing? I think that's a question that we need to ask ourselves because I think with millennials early on, we thought social media technology, the digitization of everything was positive. But I think we're now kind of seeing something of a shift there. And so, the role that humans play, the role of the people who use the technology, that's really important to think about.
And also with AI merging and everything like that. And do you have the book with you, Charlie? What happened to millennials in defense of generation? Do you have the book on hand with you right now?
I have got it, but it's holding up my computer. So I think if I take it down,
Oh, that's
it's
okay. You know
gonna,
what?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, did you want to maybe read an excerpt for us if you want to find it? And would you like to maybe read a bit of an excerpt as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, if you don't mind me moving my computer a little bit.
Okay, you know what? While you do that, Charlie, we're going to take a timeout as well too. We're here with author Charlie Wells of What Happened to Millennials in Defense of Generation. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Mostly Missing, the Sweet Thomas by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, including 30 Quids of Pains and King David Psalms, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Thomas Serena Wagner. We'll be back with the amazing author, award-winning report for Bloomberg News, Charlie Wells, with What Happened to Millennials after this time out. We're back with author Charlie Wells, What Happened to Millennials in Defense of Our Generation on the Mike Wender Show. You can get it in book. And yeah, we encourage everybody to get a hard copy, a physical copy, just like albums or any paraphernalia or whatever, something that can't go digital, just have on forever and ever. Maybe just read a short excerpt from a book as well, too.
Sure,
There
got
you
it in front of me right
go.
now. Yeah, let's
Ah,
just hold it
perfect. You
up.
got it.
It's also a good laptop stand, let me tell you. Okay, aside
Oh,
from
that's
being a great
perfect. You know what?
read.
I did not even think about. You know what? Order multiple copies of the book. You can read one, you can give to one, you can share with one, you can put in public and use as a laptop stand. I love your thinking, guys.
You gotta be, yeah, it's multifaceted here. All right, you ready for this?
Absolutely.
All right, you think you know. There was a time when they called us Generation Y. There was an actual article in a prestigious national newspaper that suggested calling us the Tamagotchi generation. We were briefly the net generation, which sounds so dated now that it hurts to type. We were the thumbs because texting and video gaming had made ours the strongest parts of our hands rather than the fingers of our forebears. We were Generation Me. We were the Echo Boom. We were even called Generation 9/11. Millennials won out.
That is
So yeah,
interesting. You know what? It just made me think that we used to dial with our fingers, dial with the rotaries and all that. And
yeah,
I'd say this: let's try dialing with our thumbs for change. How's that? Dial a phone with your thumbs. Try
good workout.
yeah, work out with your thumbs. Yes, and print with your thumbs or sign language and thumbs. I think we should try something like that. So
I love that. You never know what you'll learn. But look, that was kind of about how millennials, the name for this generation, it kind of took a while for it to settle in. And there was actually a time when millennial just kind of referred to anything related to Y2K. Remember that
I
whole kind
remember
of
Y2K.
rigmarole?
You think computers going to go out, planes are going to fall
Yeah,
from the sky, and you know what? And we're still alive.
here we are. Here we are. So yeah, thank you for letting me read that. That was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun, and of course, just one more thing. Where can we find your book and how it works at, Charlie?
Yeah, so look, if you just Google, this is going to be sound like a really millennial answer. If you just Google Charlie Wells Millennials, you will find my website. You will find it on any place where books are sold online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They sell a book, you can find it there.
Certainly will. And what's your website, Charlie?
Yeah, just Google Charlie Wells, you'll find it'll come up.
All right, we'll certainly check that out. Here's the amazing author Charlie Wells of What Happened to Millennials in Defensive Generation on the Mike Wagner Show. Charlie, just a few more things. What else can we expect me in wrap up 2025 and going to 2026 and beyond?
Yeah, so something kind of exciting is the audiobook for this book will be coming out pretty soon, I think within the next week or so. So if you're more of an audiobook person, buy the book, the laptop stand, and the audiobook.
All
Um,
right. You know something? Hey, I got an idea for you. Have sell like a laptop stand with your book on it. That's another way to make some money. There you go.
you're an entrepreneur, that is smart.
You got that right. And I think you're seeing a bunch of them. They're entrepreneurs, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's so true.
That is. And who do you consider biggest influence in the career?
Yeah, wow, that it's hard to pick, but I think, it's really inspiring to know that there are so many people who are still working in journalism, in newsrooms, or in whatever capacity they're working in journalism, telling stories to people day in and day out, talking to people and trying to give people good information. And I think that's incredibly inspiring, and that's what keeps me going every day.
Okay. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Wow. Be kind. Come on, guys. It's free. It's free.
Mhm. Right. And I think that's the most important thing. We're here with the amazing author, Charlie Wells, of What Happened to Millennials in Defense of a Generation on the Mike Wagner Show. Charlie, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing, learned a lot. Looking forward to having soon. Keeps up to date. Keep in touch. Love to have you back. What's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your book?
Yeah, just Charlie Wells Millennials. Google that. You'll find everything on there. Easiest way. Don't even have to remember a website or an email address. Just go to Google.
And then how about your book? Where can we find your book at?
Yeah, anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, type in Charlie Wells Millennials. It'll come up.
We'll certainly do that as well. Once again, Charlie, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Looking forward to having soon. Keeps up to date. Keep in touch. Love having you back. We wish our best. And Charlie, you definitely have a great future ahead.
Thank you so much.